16.2 deals with evolution as genetic change. So we're going to look at natural selection on single gene traits can lead to changes in allele frequencies and thus evolution. So we see this diagram showing the effect of color mutations on lizard survival, showing that over generations, certain colors of lizards end up being more beneficial and more fit than others. Now, natural selection can affect the distribution of phenotypes in any of three ways: directional selection, stabilizing selection, or disruptive selection. So when we look at directional selection is when individuals at one end of the curve, so we look at the population as a curve, like just a bell-shaped curve, individuals at one end have higher fitness than individuals in the middle or the other end. And this situation causes the entire curve to shift as the character trait changes too. So it shifts towards either either of the far ends. Stabilizing is where the middle has the best fitness, and the curve kind of pulls inward on itself, becomes more narrow, and stays kind of where it is, but gets a little tighter up on the middle. And then disruptive selection is when individuals at the upper and lower ends of the curve have higher fitness than those in the middle, and this situation, selection acts strongly against those individuals in the middle of the curve. So the two ends are the best, and then the one in the middle is the worst. Okay, so what happens is the curve eventually it goes up and down and back up. So it creates like an M shape, and if it occurs long enough, the curve would split in two. Genetic drift is when in a small population, the results of genetic crosses move in a direction not predicted by probability, and in small population, individuals that carry a particular allele may leave more descendants than others just by chance. Right? Over this time, a series of chance occurrence of this type can cause the allele to become common in a population. So genetic drift is dealing mainly with small populations. So there's a lot of different things that can affect small populations that really aren't going to affect large populations. Because the population is small, because the number of alleles in the small population is less than in the big population, less fit traits can persist in a small population. Founder effect is where the allele frequencies change as a result of the migration of a small subgroup, and this drift was caused by chance, not selection. Right? So chance, not selection, caused a population to express a group of traits. Hardy-Weinberg principle states that allele frequencies in a population will remain constant unless one or more of those factors cause those frequencies to change. So the truth is, Hardy-Weinberg shows how difficult it is for allele frequencies to remain the same in a population, that they are going to be constantly changing. Genetic equilibrium is when allele frequencies remain constant. 5 conditions are required to maintain genetic equilibrium from generation to generation. Must be random mating. Population must be very large. There can be no movement into and out of populations, no mutations, and no natural selection. So let's talk about what those things mean. Random mating. All the members of a population must have an equal opportunity to produce offspring. Random mating ensures that each individual has equal chance of passing on its traits to its offspring. We know that random mating does not occur in populations, right? We know that random mating is something that doesn't actually exist in animals, that they are going to mate with the strongest and the best. Large populations. Now this can be achieved in populations. There can be very large populations of animals or plants or whatever. No movement into and out of a population, so there can be no immigration or emigration, because you can't have, if you're going to have the allele frequencies remain the same, you can't have that, individuals leave or come in and take, certain alleles with them if they leave, and bring new alleles with them if they come in. So that's why you can't have no movement. And no mutations, because if a mutation occurs, a new allele may be introduced into the population. And finally, for Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium to occur, no natural selection, because they all must have equal chance. So we can see right here that Hardy-Weinberg is the steps needed for a population to remain the same. And we can see that based on the steps that are there, it'd be almost impossible. It would be impossible for a population to stay the same, right? Populations are always going to be changing because there are mutations. There's no random mating. Natural selection is acting all the time. All right, so we see that Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium would be very, very difficult to maintain. Changes in gene frequencies that lead to the development of a new species are more likely to occur in small populations than larger ones. Obviously, in a large population, for an allele to permeate the population or for a trait to permeate the population, it would take a large amount of time, many generations. Whereas if the population is only 10 individuals, the trait could very easily enter the population. Right? If a smaller population becomes geographically isolated from a larger one, cannot interbreed with one another, a new species may come about.